Monday morning. It's Jim White, Simon Jordan, Martin Keown, and we are live on Talk Sports. We had to get to this at some stage, so this is as good a stage as any. A Remembrance Sunday minute silence before Kilmarnock's match with Celtic was pretty much abandoned less than seconds into it, when supporters of Celtic jeered and booed and chanted throughout it. Fans in the away end at Rugby Park, Kilmarnock's ground, waved Irish and Palestinian flags. Now, a former colleague of mine, a great fellow he is, to Ian Crocker, Sky Sports commentator, was forced to apologise on Sky, saying sorry if you were offended with the disturbance to the silence. But they kind of had a rough idea down there that it was coming, because loud booing was first heard as Kilmarnock captain Kyle Vassell approached the middle of the pitch with a wreath. After the match, both managers spoke. In a moment, we'll get the take of Brendan Rodgers, Celtic manager. Kilmarnock manager Derek McInnes said this.
Don't get any decisions. Celtic even decide when the minute silence stops. You know what I mean? We don't get these decisions.
What did you make of that?
So it was awful. Awful. Why? I'm not going to I'm not a politician or anything, but it's our ground, it's our minute silence. I don't get why we shouldn't have the wherewithal just to stand and show a bit of respect for 1 minute.
Derek McInnes saying that Celtic even decided when the minute silence stops. He says, I thought it was awful. Awful. I'm not going to lie, I'm not a politician or anything, but it's our ground, it's our minute silence. This was Celtic boss Brendan Rodgers.
If it's a minute silence, it's a minute's silence, and of course there's a little bit of issue around that each year for us, but I think if it was a minute, then you do that. So it's always a difficult one, that one. It's it's every year. I think it's the situation that takes place, but thankfully we get the win in the football side, and we go into the break in a really, really good place.
Brendan Rodgers, who was pitch side, who was wearing a poppy, he says, a minute's silence, I think we all want to respect that, and we all understand that some don't. They can be divisive. Simon's alongside me with Martin. Where do we go with this? To be quite honest, it's difficult to know, Simon. The Scottish football authorities, are they damned if they do and damned if they don't when it comes to paying respects in Scottish football?
Well, I'm not entirely sure where they can go with it. I mean, there is a school of thought that says people, however you might not like their view, have a right to express their opinions. And if they don't particularly appreciate the remembrance of the circumstances that we obviously well rehearsed, the 1914, 18, 45, 39, 45 wars and all that goes with it, then you can't make them. You can't make them. The fact that they get coverage is the difficult thing, because if you weren't covering it and focusing on it and expecting people to behave in a certain way, then they probably would be less inclined to be as vociferous as they are. And there's a part of me that feels, no, I don't like it. I think it's unacceptable. And I think that a minute's silence should be observed but people don't want to. And I don't think there's a lot that the Scottish authorities can do. What can they do? What can they do? Reach into the minds of people and understand what they're going to do. What can they do in a situation like this? Ban Celtic fans from a game if it's at home, because when Remembrance Sunday falls on a Celtic home game, ban all the fans on the basis that maybe a few hundred or thousands of Celtic fans might do something. Or Kilmarnock could say, we're not going to take any Celtic fans this weekend because we know what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think Simon's right a bit on this, because it's a very deep-rooted issue. Particularly, you've got a lot of Irish Catholic fans that go to those games, and there's a resistance, Jim, as well, obviously, to the British flag and the history that exists over the years with a lot of those fans and where they come from. I don't think it's an issue that's going to go away. I think it's generational. I think maybe along the line it disappears, but for some people it's still fresh, and there's an issue, and that's why you're seeing it.
When it comes to Remembrance Sunday silence at all, Simon, is it not a better idea to exclude Celtic from it?
There's a part of me that thinks that is, in part, a solution. What are you going to do if Celtic are playing at home on Remembrance Sunday? Are you going to say to them, it's Parkhead, isn't it, that you can't have 50,000 Celtic fans inside the stadium as a result of the fact?
No, but I'm saying maybe not have the silence at all.
So Celtic, I mean, that would be an argument that suggests that's the argument Derek McInnes is in part making, which is the football in Scotland and every aspect of it, from how the construct of Scottish football is put together, the value is only Celtic and Rangers. So in that instance, what we'd be saying is that because Celtic, a section of Celtic's fan base, however big it may be, are not prepared to turn their back on that and not prepared to keep their powder dry for 1 minute, that the entirety of the opposition have to accept that. So whoever's playing in that situation, Celtic are excluded from the minute silence in the same way that, the dreadful and revolting chants that they thought that were funny to chant when Queen Elizabeth passed away and all that went with that they should be accepted. They can be tolerated. They don't have to be accepted in terms of, the idea that they have this view in the same way that James McLean has a view. I don't agree with James McLean's view. He takes everything back to 1972 and Bloody Sunday and everything went with that. And he himself talks about the poppy and wants to stand aside. And the more people focus on it, James McLean's entitled to an opinion. He doesn't agree with the value of the poppy. He quite believes in the value of the wars and celebrating that if that was all they were celebrating.
I saw James standing to one side of the rest of the Wrexham boys. I know James McLean. I want people to know out there, I speak to him on a semi-regular basis, and he's a good guy and is very cooperative when it comes to doing things for this show on Talk Sport. But I would argue that there was almost a bit of respect from James by standing to one side. It was his own peaceful protest, and that was the way he wanted to go about it. This was anything but peaceful at Rugby Park from the Celtic support. There's Jill. One word, respect. There was none. Jill's right. Many messages coming in here this morning on this. Dave is, I think, a Dunfermline fan who's waiting to speak to us. Dave, what's your take on it? Good morning. What's left of it?
Great show as always, boys. Great, and it's great to be on the show today.
Thanks, Dave.
My take on it is the utter lack of respect, for a solemn occasion. And it's not the first time. This happens every time Celtic are playing away in this weekend, over the years. They do it. And it shows you our authorities, SFA, SPL, they just stand by and allow this to happen.
But what should they do? That's what I'm saying, Dave. With all due respect to them, they're damned if they do and damned if they don't when it comes to paying respect like this, aren't they?
Of course. Jim, the only way that teams like, the fans who do these that exhibit this moronic behaviour, the only way that they will stop it is if the club, sadly, the club can't control these supporters. The club needs to be, how about a points deduction or something? And I totally agree with Simon. When he was talking about, again, this, and Martin mentioned it too. This goes back almost centuries, and they just will never get it. And I don't. So I believe that a points deduction. I know maybe that sounds a bit crazy, but perhaps that's the answer.
Do you think that's over the? Thanks for that, Dave. Do you think that's over the top, Sam?
I don't see how you can consequence the football club for a section of its fan base. It's like, ultimately I never agree with, the consequences of federation because an idiot minority of football fans want to boo another team's national anthem. I just don't think you can eradicate it. You can show your contempt for it, your disdain for it. I think it's an embarrassment to Celtic Football Club as a leading football club in European and world football that a section of their fan base want to behave in such a disrespectful fashion. They don't respect the value of it. We're asking people, for whatever reason, and dig deep into their psyche to understand their objections to it, and I'm sure a few of them will be able to explain them, and a lot of them won't, that they don't respect this particular moment. They don't respect the passing of the Queen, and so you're not going to make them. We're not going to make them. All we can do is have our view on it,
right,
and say it's unacceptable. It's a blot on Celtic as a football club. It's not something to be admired. I'd like to see the football manager being a tad more condemnatory and a tad more robust. If he's going to say something, say something. If you're going to say that you think it's unacceptable, say it's unacceptable. Don't walk down the line of the endless politician that you seek to be. If you're going to say something on this subject matter and you're going to wear a poppy yourself and you're going to observe the minute silence yourself, then you would, as a football club, you're representing a leading football club. Maybe just a tad more condemnatory from Brendan. Not that they would take any notice of it, quite frankly.
I was going to say that. I mean, he was strong in the pyrotechnics. Maybe why not be as strong on this?
Absolutely.
It would be remiss of us to talk about this without getting the Celtic fans' view. So we will do. And Mark, I think, Mark, if I'm right in thinking you're a good friend of the show, you come on to us regularly. If it is you, good morning. What do you want to say?
Yeah, it's me, Jim. Yes, I'm the one with the bet with Graham Souness, outstanding.
Oh, that's right. Well done. Yes. Go on, Mark.
Well, I've got a particular sort of interest in this. I'm an ex-serviceman. I served in the Royal Air Force. I'm also of Irish descent. I've Irish grandparents, and I still get many family over in Donegal who I visit regularly. And while I was serving, I was over in Donegal with my RAF warrant card in my back pocket. And had anyone, friends, people who we met over there, had they known I had that in my back pocket, I might have been a wee bit of bother, quite frankly. So I had to kind of make up a story of what I'd done for a living. I totally understand the ill feeling towards Remembrance Day from some fans, given that they have links to perhaps Derry or Belfast, where atrocities did happen under the auspices of the British Army. However, that said, if you cannot stand in silence to remember anyone who's died, quite frankly, there's something wrong with you. And if you don't want to do it, simply stand outside and come into the ground afterwards, or turn your backs, but don't sing through it, and certainly don't sing pro-IRA songs, which is just disgusting at any time, quite frankly, Jim.
Mark, you and I both know, though, don't we, that the vast majority of the travelling support that went to Kilmarnock at the weekend don't think the way you think.
Yeah, and that is the case. And listen, as Simon rightly said at the beginning of this, you are entitled to your opinion. We do live in a free society.
Yeah.
And the irony is that the men and women who we remember on Remembrance Day died to uphold that freedom. So I think it's important that freedom is allowed to exist. However, it's just a bit crass when you sing through it. You can protest in other ways, such as James McLean with a very sort of dignified protest that he took. And anyone can understand his take, because the guy is from Derry. He doubtless knows people who were affected by the Bloody Sunday massacres. So it's completely understandable. But just don't bring the name of Celtic into disrepute by singing through a minute's silence, irrespective of who it's for. Quite frankly, it's just wrong.
Mark, thanks very much indeed. Your contributions are always so valuable. Thank you very much indeed, Mark. Jim White, Simon Jordan, Martin Keown. A lot to get through before 1 o'clock. Stay with us.